Our dad entered our home, so we made him want to take his life a living hell. Way back when my older sister, Kyan, was born, Dad had already fallen off the wagon. The first thing he ever did was physically force Mom into doing hardcore substances to make sure she stayed with him. Following her birth, things only got worse. While Mom would do what she could, Dad was not happy about having a kid. He'd lock Kyan in her room for days at a time, because obviously you can't cook stovetop while hearing how hungry your child is. 2 years later, Mom was pregnant with my twin, Ryan, and me. She immediately tried quitting the substances, and had some success, but having stovetop in our system, we were at serious risk. Ryan and I were born with huge complications, premature, barely breathing, and weakened immune systems. After that came the worst few months for Mom to endure. While having one kid made Dad angry, having 3 made him fly completely off the handle. It was at this time Mom made the hard decision to call DCFS on herself. She knew we weren't safe and wanted a way for us to escape this situation. Mom willfully signed away her rights to us, and Dad of course wanted to fight. Both were arrested for child abuse and endangerment as well as the substances. It took 4 years and hundreds of letters for Mom to get into rehab. As this was happening, my siblings and I lived with our grandmother, who we grew up calling Mom. My grandmother had no intention on fully adopting us, but she was left with little choice after a few years. It was either adopt us or we would be taken into DCFS care. Life was better for us mostly and we were safe. After a few years in rehab, Mom was able to get back in touch with us. She was welcomed and I ended up crying because I found out my adoptive mom wasn't my real mom. We did get to leave kindergarten early the day she came home, though. We grew as a family and it was good. After a few years of this, my adoptive father left the picture. Now, everything is actually great. My grandmother passed away in 2017. This was hard for everybody, but especially for Mom. She was devastated, losing the one person who believed she could become clean, a good person, and a great mother. Now, Dad gets out of prison and goes back every few years, and he usually tries to get in touch when he does. This year was different. We didn't have our grandma to make sure everything would stay safe, and Mom didn't think she could handle seeing him. The mistake: the day comes to bury my grandmother. It was a particularly warm November day. We are all having a hard time and don't deal with grief too well. I stayed with Mom the entire time while Ryan went to our other grandparents to help out. Kyan stayed in her room the whole time. We occasionally checked in on her. Night falls and we are looking through old pictures of Grandma. We were finally able to stop crying. That is until we hear some heavy banging on our door, followed by it swinging open, and in walks Dad. He goes straight to Kyan's room and Mom is simply frozen. This is the first time I've ever seen her this way. He eventually leaves on his own after some screaming and making Kyan cry. He ended up taking her money and then hitting her. Dusty, my stepdad, has called the police already. Dusty has been outside the whole time, and as soon as Dad left he went to confront him. Mom had to snap herself out of that frozen state and called Dusty inside. She didn't know if Dad was armed or anything and didn't want to take any chances. Dad goes across the street and pulls stuff out of his pocket. As the cops pull up, he was dumping his bath salts right in front of the cops. He ends up arrested and we get a restraining order. This is not the last we see of him, though. Over the next few years we hatch a plan to make sure he regrets ever threatening our family again. The plan we managed to come up with was initially supposed to be petty and mildly inconvenient, but it ended up being so much more. We were just going to call the police every week or so on him. If he had something he wasn't supposed to have, back to jail. This didn't work out as planned and the turnout was much more severe. Dad gets out of prison and lives with his mom. Now the problem with this is that we regularly go visit our grandparents, which means he'd either have to leave or we couldn't go. Nana would always make him leave if we came over, no matter what temperature, time, or weather conditions. This would also apply to whenever we stay the night. We visited Nana so much after knowing what she'd do to see us. This was just our way of saying, screw you, to our dad. The thing about this meant he was essentially homeless, didn't have a car, and could barely find a job. When a job did hire him, he'd post in or Nana would tell us, we'd give them a call and have them do a drug test. He always failed the drug tests. So now he's essentially homeless, having the police called on him, and on drugs. He gets tired of this pretty quickly and goes back to Nana's when we are there. A clear violation of the restraining order, so he gets fined. This isn't a meager amount of money either. This ruined his savings. So now he's also broke and got kicked out of Nana's. Now he starts to realize he's pretty screwed. We call the police for a suspicious man sleeping on the sidewalk and he had substances on him, back to jail. At least he has a bed. After a few times of this he is finally broken, devoid of all hope. He manages to get Nana to let him stay there again, so now we get more updates. This has been going on for months now, and we weren't going to stop. Job gone. Home gone. Money gone. Substances gone. Hope gone. He actually started to be clean for a bit. Hard to get substances if you can't buy them, and when you do they immediately get confiscated. That is until he finds a new woman. He gets back on the substances thanks to her money. So what do? Get her arrested while he's gone. We are being extra careful not to get him arrested anymore, since he'd end up in federal prison this time. Now we've taken away his girlfriend, too. The effect, all of this has worn him down. He's gone. Any time he'd regain even a tiny bit of hope, we'd snuff it out. He eventually tries to take his own life. With a gun that he's not supposed to have. And he fails. So now we get to watch him suffer in the hospital while knowing he gets taken to prison as soon as he heals. We had to make things worse for him. We couldn't let the times we didn't call the police go unnoticed after all. He now has quite a while in federal prison. My sister ruined my credit, so I ruined her entire life. My selfish sister had always been the golden child of my family, so I'm happy I could be the one to finally ruin her once perfect life. She was a rainbow baby in my parents' miracle, so she was always spoiled and given special treatment when we were growing up. I am 21 and my sister is 18. After she was born, my parents gave me way less attention and started to spend all their time and money on her and would just ignore me. They bought her whatever she wanted, and if she wanted something of mine I had no choice but to give it to her no matter how hard I cried. Even when I was in high school, and I started to buy my own things, she would let herself into my room and use my stuff and sometimes break things. Even after she broke both my PlayStation controllers on the same exact day, my parents didn't punish her or pay me back even though I had bought my PlayStation with my own money. Ever since she was a child she always threw loud tantrums where she threw herself on the floor, broke things, and screamed at the top of her lungs until she got whatever it was that she wanted. My parents made me pay for my own phone bill and my own school and sports supplies all throughout high school because they spent all their extra money on my sister and whatever clothes or electronics she wanted. They buy her a new iPhone every year and I still use my phone from 4 years ago. I always knew my sister was a spoiled little brat with no future, but I didn't know just how evil she was until this month. I finally saved enough money to finally move out of my parents' house and get away from my toxic little sister. I've had it with her breaking and stealing my stuff and I couldn't wait to live on my own. Anyway, I started looking for apartments and it was through this process that I found out my credit score was in the effing 200s, despite me never opening a line of credit in my entire life. If you don't know anything about credit scores, that is a dog-shit score, and it meant I wasn't going to be able to move out anytime soon. I went to the bank and it was there where I discovered that my little sister had opened multiple credit cards in my name. She had maxed out every card she opened up and hidden all the credit bills that had been coming in the mail for me. I had never been so unbelievably angry in my life. I came home and showed my parents proof of what she had done. I wasn't even surprised when they defended her and said she was just a kid and probably didn't understand what she was doing. I had enough of them and I confronted my sister. I called her a useless, selfish bitch and I told her that she was going to pay for all this. I told her that she was finally going to learn about the real world and that I didn't care if she was my family. She was a legal adult now and I was going to sue her off. My sister thought I was bluffing. She laughed in my face and said that my money was her money because I was her family and that's what family is for. I left the house for a couple of days and stayed with a friend. I talked to a lawyer and had my sister served with court papers. I shut off my phone when my parents started blowing it up after my sister was served. I went home the other day to pack some more things and my sister was red in the face, crying and begging me to drop the case against her. She threw herself on the floor and everything despite her literally being a legal adult. She was kicking my door as I packed and screamed at me that I couldn't do this to her and that she didn't deserve it. She said she would be ruined before she even graduated high school and this time I laughed in her face. My parents also begged me not to sue her. Again they said she was just a kid. I told them that they hadn't cared about me at all when I was just a kid, so why the hell should I care about my sister? I'm suing her for every last penny that she stole from me, and then I'm never speaking to my family until the day I die. Update: it's been a long time since I made my first post, and things have only gotten more chaotic and depressing since I first found out my sister had completely destroyed my credit. I had been trying to move out on my own when I found out that my sister had maxed out a bunch of credit cards in my name and tanked my credit before I even had a chance to use it in my own life. A lot of people were completely correct and guessed that my parents had given her my social security number, and that's how she was able to open all of the credit cards without my permission. I still have no idea why they gave her my social security number. Part of me thinks that maybe they were all in on it together and that they shared the money that they got from the credit cards. I honestly didn't even care, and I didn't even view those people as my family, just criminals who tried to ruin my life for their own selfish reasons. That's why I didn't feel bad at all when I decided to serve my sister with court papers when she was only 18. I would have never been able to repay the debts and raise my own credit, so suing her was my only real option. My entire family begged me to drop the case and insisted that they didn't have the money for court fees or to pay me back, but again I really just didn't care. They had never cared about me, so I was just returning the favor. Things got really bad after the case started, and my parents would constantly contact me saying that my sister's mental health was declining the longer the case went on. This really didn't concern me or affect my feelings at all, since my sister had been the sole reason for my own mental health decline the entire time I had been living with my family. I only really started to feel bad for her when my parents started telling me that she had started doing drugs to cope with the stress of the case. As much as I hated my little sister, I would have never wanted her to be dealing with serious substance abuse issues. My parents said that she had gotten really into taking pills and just spent all of her time conked out on Xanax. My mom called me on the phone one day crying, saying that this was all my fault and that if I never took her to court then she would have never started doing drugs. This honestly was a really upsetting call, and I cried afterward too. Just hearing my mom blame me for my sister's problems made me regret everything that I had done, even if my sister was in the wrong. I thought I couldn't feel any worse until my dad called me a couple weeks later and said that my sister had overdosed and that they were with her in the hospital while she was recovering. They said that they had come home and found her unresponsive on the floor, covered in her own puke. They rushed her to the emergency room just in time to save her life. As soon as I heard this, I knew that I needed to visit her in the hospital. At the end of the day, she was my little sister, and it was breaking my heart to hear that she was going through this. But when I got to the hospital, my parents freaked out on me and told me to leave. They even went as far as to have hospital security escort me out. Now I'm sitting in my car outside the hospital because, at the end of the day, I just want to be close to my sister while she goes through this. Now I feel that I should have never done this to my family, and I wish I could just take